is to to be enculturated by the community I serve, instead of impose my culture into the community. But it's reaching out and sharing the gifts that we have. So last summer I had my summer assignment in a parish in Portland, Oregon, not Portland, in Oregon, in Norbert. Mostly the community is a white community, and I loved it. I was like so nervous, I was like so scared. I was like, what am I going to offer? What am I going to do? I had all these things in my head, and they were so kind to me. They opened, their hearts. They were so warm. I love them, and I was like, oh, I want to be in a community like this, to learn and to, have that sense of community. So, because of that experience, I'm still getting nervous about reaching out, to different communities other than mine because, the lack of language. But I hope that with the grace of God and the compassion of your hearts, and also to be exposed and practice more, I can be able to one day say, there is not like St. Paul, there is no Greeks or Jews or, so we can say there is no Spanish, white, Indonesian or, Central America, whatever, but we all are Christians because we understand each other, because we open our hearts to each other. And I think that's the most important aspect. So tonight, and the two other talks I'm gonna do, are mostly using the element of incorporation. And I prepared these talks to an audience that are not or didn't grow up or didn't born in a family where they hear and the family pass on this event on the Guadalupe love, to see Guadalupe as a mother. So I'm going to offer you first, all the elements behind and prior to the apparition, so you can understand what is the apparition all about. Yeah. So, and for me to do that, I'm going to use a lot of historical facts so we can seek truth. But in order for us to see that truth as God saw it, we need an important element. We need faith. And these two elements will reveal to us the truth for the reality of God. And this truth probably lead us to see the reality of what happened at the Guadalupe event. And how can we connect this event to our own history? History that is marked by our God, the giver of life, the God of our faith, who in our land offer us the joy of the permanent mystery of His love through the mystery of the tender and delicate love of our Mother Mary. So like I said, these talks are going to be an introduction, so you can have different elements that can help you to have a better vision of why this event happened. Yeah, and before we go into the event, so I invite you tonight to open your minds to see and experience a different vision of this event. A vision in which we need to borrow the eyes of those who live and experience the Guadalupe event. Then we need to borrow the eyes of our ancestors, the different characters of this story, and most of all, the eyes of the author of this event, which is our God. So we will use and try to use the loving eyes of our God, eyes that were embodied in the very eyes of our Mother Mary, the Mother of the true God. So, this event not only transformed our ancestors and the people that lived before us, but also is an event that continuously transforms, the lives of all who believe in the true God. So, if we see in this image, so we see different characters. So we see our mother, and she's looking, at these different characters. So we have the main characters in the event, the conquistadores, and then we have the Aztecs or the indigenous, and then we have religious men, which, probably the Franciscans, Dominicans, Augustinians that came at that time. So these three characters were involved in the event of Our Lady of Guadalupe. So we are going to see the historical context of these three different groups. So we will go into the Franciscan order. We will go to Spain and see what happened in Spain in the 14th and 15th century. And then we will see also at that time what was the life of the Aztecs, what was the life of all the kingdoms in the land that we call Mexico today. So, in the 14th century, many things happened in the world. Mostly Europe at the time. In 1346, the Black Death decimates Europe. That was a big event that, changed the life of all the people, in the whole world. 1378, we had in the church two popes. So the schism that, we have a pope in Rome and we have a pope in France. We have Clement the Seventh in France and was recognized by all the French territory. And then we had the pope in Rome, which was Urban the Sixth, and the rest of the church recognizes the pope, Urban the Sixth. So then in the 1400s, we had the Renaissance era. So a lot of progress in every aspect of the lives of the European people changed because of that. 1417, we have the Council of Constance, where was the largest meeting in the medieval history and ends the Great Schism. So the council gave secular support and elects Martin V as a pope. It replaces papal monarchy with a conciliar government. So it means that popes weren't elected, because as a monarchs. So from this council, the popes are elected within the church, with a council formed by the church. So, 1450, the printing press is developed, and this also changed a lot of the dynamics, in the old world. 1469, Ferdinand of Aragon marries Isabella of Castile, and the two Spanish kingdoms end their conflicts. So, which now bring us to Spain. Yeah. So Spain is the country where this story, this event, of the apparitions kind of starts. So, like I said, King Ferdinand and Isabella got married, united their kingdoms, and they looking to unite all the kingdoms of Spain. And so they reached that, but also they also want to get rid of Muslims and Jews who were present in the country of Spain for many, many years. Yeah, especially Muslims, they conquered most of the south of Spain, and Jews were welcomed by the Spanish monarchs many, many years ago, centuries ago, and they developed, a great community in Spain. So, but in the 14th century, these two cultures were kind of not welcome anymore. Yeah. So the rulers of Spain, and the government, they were trying to get rid of, Muslims in Spain. So we go into that. Also, one great aspect of this era was the Inquisition. And the Inquisition in Spain was big, yeah, especially because the monarchs used Inquisition to their own benefit. So the Inquisition, mostly were used by the Catholic Church, to suppress and punish heretics. Yeah. So Spain uses this tool to get in their own benefit and control, the kingdom, control also these two situations with Muslim people and the Jews. So, with the largest Muslim and Jewish population, medieval Spain was the only multiracial and multi-religious country in West Europe. And much of the development of Spanish civilization in religion, literature, art, and architecture during the later Middle Ages stem from this fact. So a lot of the influence from these two cultures was part already of the life of the Spanish people. So, next So in 1478, the Spanish monarchs first obtained a papal bull from Sixtus IV, and setting up the Inquisition to deal with the conversos of people who were baptized, Jews or Muslims, and the Spanish Inquisition was constituted as a royal court. Yeah, all appointments were made by the crown, and the Pope eventually realized too late the enormous ecclesiastical powers that he had given away and the moral danger inherent in an institution, the proceeding of which were secret and that did not allow appeals to Rome. So Spain took, total control of the Inquisition, and like I say, to their own benefit. So even though Pope Sixtus IV, eventually reject. So it was kind of too late, yeah. And then eventually, money gets involved, and the Spanish, at the time, were like really, really powerful in Europe. So the Pope didn't want to get a conflict between Spain and, Rome or Italy. So the Spanish Inquisition became a formidable weapon in the harmony of royal absolutism. The Supreme Council of the Inquisition, or Suprema was called, was the only formal institution established by the Catholic monarchs for all their kingdom together. So what was the situation with the Muslims? So the Muslims, like I said, they conquered all the south part of Spain. Spain eventually, with many efforts, fight the Muslims and, expel them from Spain. But the Muslims, so they used the Inquisition, for the Muslims who remain in Spain. And they offered them, to be baptized. Many Muslims were baptized. And so they were okay. But eventually, they start seeing that Muslims gain so much into the nobles, into the deal with trades, art, you name it, in the life of the Spaniards. So people start getting jealous about the Muslims. So they said, okay, so they are baptized, but they still practicing their traditions. So that is contrary to our Catholic faith. So eventually, in 1502, Cardinal Jimenez de Cisneros ordered the prescription of Islam in Granada. So the last of the Muslim kingdoms in Spain to fall to the Reconquista. The persecution of Muslims accelerated in 1507, when Jimenez was named inquisitor. Muslims were subjected to forced conversion in 1526, and Islam was subsequently banned in Spain. The Inquisition then devoted its attention to the Moriscos. Moriscos were all those who were baptized, they were Catholics, but they're still practicing, some of their traditions. So Spanish Muslims who have previously accepted the baptism, then the Inquisition and the Crown prohibited any expression to the Moriscos. The Moriscos were driven from Spain in 1571, and by 1614, some 300,000 had been expelled from Spain entirely. So, as you can see, that's the same happened to the Jewish people. So the Jew people were in Spain also for centuries. Eventually, they, became powerful. They got noble titles, and so people start getting jealous. So the former protectors, the monarchs for Jewish people, begin to restrict the rights and privilege of the Jews. The devastation caused by the Black Death led to increased popular hostility, as many believed that the plague was a plot devised by Jews to destroy Christianity. Yeah, so that was the thing for them. So all the Jews who embraced Catholicism, who were baptized, yeah, also, eventually they asked them to stop expressing their culture. Because, they said, well, that's against Christianity. So they start calling them the pigs, marranos, yeah, because they thought that they were hypocrite. They didn't, they were honest on, accepting and embracing baptism, but they still, doing, and practicing their culture. So, eventually, things get very hostile for the Jews, and eventually, also they were expelled from Spain, using, the Spanish monarchs used the Inquisition to say either you stop, yeah, practicing your culture, or the other, it was death. So this is Spain at this time, in the 4th century, before they go, and discover the New World. So we have Catholic monarchs, yeah, kings, that uses this powerful tool of the Inquisition, yeah, not to clean the church from heretic, yeah, or heretics, but they're using it for their own power. Yeah? So in their mind, now they use this tool to, get power, to get away with, this power-driven. So then we have, yeah, among our characters, the Franciscans. So the Franciscans at this time, in the 14th and 15th century, was a movement of changes, reforms in the order. And especially in Spain, we had two groups. Yeah, the Franciscans at this time is one order, but there are two spiritualities. Yeah, one that is called, or they call the conventuals. And the conventuals spirituality was to, live in big monasteries, friaries. They, build universities, and they, have titles as theologians, as teachers. They were and served, the monarchs and the royals, and then we had the other group who were the observants, and this group, they wanted to go back to the roots of our order, to live like St. Francis lived, to live in poverty, to live in obedience, to live in chastity, to avoid titles, to avoid, living in big monasteries, to avoid only serving the rich or the royals, but to go to the poor. And so there was this conflict between, these two groups. So eventually, yeah, the observants, yeah, were too appealing to the people, and people start following, especially in Spain. People start following, listening, to the observants, and they start creating small communities of people who want, secular people who also want to live this sort of, life, yeah, in poverty, yeah, living by the gospel values. And eventually the observants also divided into two groups. So we are Franciscans, and we are very always changing. So One group was called the Hieronymus. And this group, said, yes, we want to go to the roots of our, tradition, the roots of our order. But, Francis of Assisi used to go to the caves to, and hermitage and pray. And so that's what we need to do. We need to live in poverty and so on. But we need to be away from everything. Yeah, and our life has to be just our community and God. And the second group, the observants, they said, no, yes, we embrace, again, poverty and all the gospel values, but we need to be among the people. So they chose to, be with the people, to live the gospel values, but among the people. So this is, what is happening in this time in the 14th century before the Franciscans went to America. So Pope Alexander IV, made official when he issued the papal bull Inter Cathedra. This important document gave the responsibility of evangelization the newly discovered lands to Spain's Catholic kings. But also, before that happens, also the Pope finally, allow the two different groups, the conventuals and the observants, to be separated. So, so some of the qualities that the observants had, so they despise material goods and titles. All friars who held degrees in theology or universities or as a teachers, they gave them up. They renounced these titles and devoted themselves to living a simple life in absolute poverty. So this was the message, that the Franciscans were, spreading all over Spain. So this message not only reached the poor, but also reached the kings, the nobility. And the nobility and the royals start, getting as confessors some of these friars, the observants. So, as getting closer to the royals and to, the nobles, so they start getting, again, more popularity, more support from the nobles, and especially from Rome. So, that's why Pope, given the, entrust the evangelization of the New World to them. So, by the middle of the 15th century, the rigor of the rule and their contempt for possessing large convents, so they returned to the studies, in which friars started, not getting titles, but they started, acquiring knowledge, because they want to be prepared for, this new evangelization. So they become cosmographers, astrologers, and physicists. And this changed the view of the Franciscans in how they want to promote new communities on which the new evangelization can recreate new Christianity. So these Franciscans, the observants, in their mind and their intention is to create a new society based on the gospel values with the spirituality and tradition of the Franciscans. So, charged with the Dominicans with the evangelization of the Indians of America. the Franciscans enthusiastically devoted themselves to the missionary task and attempted to create in the New World a new society through the teaching. So one of the biggest friars who influenced these new societies was Fray Bernardino de Sahagún, Fray Andrés de Olmos, Fray Toribio de Benavente, Fray Diego de Landa, and Fray Jerónimo de Mendieta. And they offer in their works a vision of America that shaped European ideas regarding the new continent, its inhabitants and history, while dozens of Franciscans followed the example of Fray Juan de Zumárraga. They indoctrinated the Indians in their schools and colleges, transmitting to them their peculiar vision of humanity, religion, and salvation. So each religious order adopted distinct postures in the New World according to their own spiritualities and philosophical traditions. In general terms, the Franciscans' defense of the Indians followed the course of charity and love, while the Dominicans pursued a more theoretical and judicial route. In the words of the Mexican historian El Mundo, so he says that these two exceptional early missionaries, the Franciscan Motolinia and the Dominican de las Casas, that Motolinia was a father to the Indians, and Las Casas was their lawyer. So, this is just some, of the aspects of what is it that the Franciscans brought to America along with the Dominicans. So this is Bartolomé de las Casas, and he commented in one of his writings, what we committed in the Indies stands out among the most unpardonable offenses ever committed against God and mankind, and this trade in Indian slaves as one of the most unjust, evil, and cruel among them. So, like today we see or we hear a lot of the stories, that the Franciscans or the friars, the first missionaries were cruel with the Indians and that they enslaved them, or you hear, all these kind of stories. We have this big issue with also in protest when Pope Francis canonized Father Serra, Fray Junipero Serra. So you have the two facts, story of, the Spaniards, the conquistadores, and you have, what was the spirituality that the Franciscans or Dominicans or other religions, brought to America. So the Franciscan spirituality and the tradition was to promote, a civilization based on love, based on the gospel. So they want to promote, through education, this new life in these new people that, in the new continent. So this is very general aspects of what we, see that these characters bring to America. So we are going to have some time for a few questions before we have our break. Any questions, comments? Yes?
So, Brother Sal, so you're saying that the Franciscans at that time were involved in the slave trade?
I mean, they were defending, yeah, and they were against the slave trade. Yeah.
So why is Bartolome saying that what we committed?
Because they were Spanish.
So we the Spanish, not we the Franciscans.
Yeah, we the Spanish, you know, like, because, I mean, they were considered themselves part of the group. They came with the conquistadores, and they saw what the conquistadores were doing. So, and it wasn't any different from what they did prior to, the conquista with the Jews and the Muslim in Spain. So the conquistadores already had this idea of, imposing in order to get to the kingdom of Spain at any cost. And they had the Inquisition, which kind of opened the door, and justified all these atrocities that they were doing. Any other? Yes, Alicia?
I wish this one apostles of the New Spain.
Yes. So the Franciscans, because they have this idea of creating a new civilization. So they compare this time, of the discovery of America as a new Genesis, as a new Christianity time, when Jesus and the disciples started, a new Christianity, well, Christianity actually, So they kind of imitate that sort of model on which, Christ, 12 apostles, new life. So there were chosen 12 friars who prepared themselves, who, got all these different tools, but mostly they all came with this idea of, create a new Christianization based on the true Gospels, again, like in the beginning, Christ and the disciples. And so that was their idea. And that's why they have 12 friars, 12 disciples, and new Christianity, new civilization. Any other questions, comments? Okay, so we're gonna break. I don't know how much time we usually get. Like 10 minutes. Okay, so 10 minutes, and we had, I guess, some dessert, and we still had coffee, and you know where the bathrooms are, so So we saw two characters, the conquistadores, Spain, and the kings, and their interest is to gain territory, silver and gold, and slaves. And then we have, the religious men, Franciscans, Dominicans, and Augustinians, and Jesuits at one point. And their interest is to create a new civilization based on the gospel and the Franciscan spirituality and tradition. Okay, so now we're going to go into the third character of the story, the event, which are the Aztecs. So,
it is a story wrapped in myth and legend. How did a tribe of wandering nomads engineer the America's greatest empire in just 200 years?
They had to devise engineering systems which were extraordinary for their age.
Their civilization rivaled Rome in its sophistication.
The Aztecs had the best technology that could be produced in the conditions of which they lived.
Aqueducts, palaces, pyramids, and temples stood as a tribute to their gods and a testament to the power of humankind. The Aztecs' crowning achievement was a gleaming capital city that astonished European explorers called the Venice of the New World.
The city spread out, glittering against its canals and its lake, bedecked with fine trees and beautiful mansions.
Their thirst for power and blood set them on a course for destruction. When it finally came, their annihilation would be swifter and more complete than the world had ever known.
Can you stop it? Okay, so who had an idea what the Aztecs were before? Because also, we hear sometimes parts of, the story or stories about who were the Aztecs. And I think one of the aspects that might be more popular and horrifying is the sacrifices that the Aztecs, did. Yeah. So by listening to this, we probably create an image of these people and civilization was barbarians, and but we will see, why is it that they did what they did, but the Aztecs were a big civilization by the time the Spaniards arrived. So the Aztecs are said they came from a place called Aztlan, which is most to the northern part of Mexico. And one day in the 13th century, a chief, Tenoch, and his priests received a message, inspired by the god Huitzilopochtli.
Say that.
Huitzilopochtli. It's even harder for me to, it's hard for me to pronounce English. Nahuatl is even worse. So don't worry about Huitzilopochtli, yeah? So this god, by inspiration to the chief of the tribe and the priest, asked them to leave their land and to go to a land that he will, show to them. And then he says, I'm going to give you a sign, and you will know that this is the land. Is this familiar to you? Where did you hear this before? The story of Moses, and before Moses? Abraham. God speaks to Abraham and says, take your family and go to the land I'm going to give you. So, it just happens, to the Aztecs, that they also heard, one of the gods, and, so they left, they left their home, and they journeyed into the land that this God promised to them. So it took them a journey of 200 years to get to this land, And this land, the sign was that they will find an eagle standing on a cactus, nopal, devouring a serpent. So that was the sign. And so they find the sign, which was in the lake of Texcoco. And they built the first temple there, and they settled in this land. But prior to, finding this land, they, were traveling and moving from place to place. They conquered, and they other tribes or other kingdoms, and ally with another, kingdoms close to this area, which was controlled by a kingdom called Toltecas. So the Toltecas, you know, they fight and the Aztecas win. They gain the territory and they become a powerful nation, yeah, in this territory. So this powerful city is called Tenochtitlan. Okay, so the Aztecs built this marvelous city and empire through force, yeah. So they conquered about 400 to 500 empires or kingdoms around Tenochtitlan. So you see, you know, the map. So their kingdom became, you know, one of the largest kingdoms in Mesoamerica at the time. So about 5 million to 6 million people, yeah, were spread all over 80,000 square miles, yeah. And the city of Tenochtitlan was one of the largest city at the time in Mesoamerica. So all these little kingdoms around the center, Tenochtitlan, yeah, were oppressed by the Aztecs. Yeah, so these little kingdoms hate the Aztecs because they were oppressed by them. Yeah, so this is a, you know, an important information to just hold it there, that they hate the Aztecs because of the oppression and the taxation that they had, and also we will see now, you know, about the sacrifices. So Tenochtitlan, yeah, the largest city in Mesoamerica. So about 140,000 people live in this city. Yeah, the structure of the city was magnificent. Yeah, the way that they, you know, do business, the religiosity, you know, their philosophy, the way that the construction, I mean, everything was just outstanding. I mean, this civilization, the Aztec, really create one of the biggest kingdoms in Mesoamerica. So they spent 200 years in their pilgrimage before they settled in Tenochtitlan, the big city. So about the year 208, that's, you know, from their departure from Aztlan when they settled to Tenochtitlan is 208 years. So very significant for them. So for the Aztecs, numbers and their symbolism were very, very important. For example, 4, yeah, their numerical system was in 20s. So for the Aztecs, a century, it was a 52-year, not 100-year like we know today. Yeah. So a person who wore, you know, 50, over 50, so that was a very old person. Yeah. So fortunately, nobody here is on that, right? So we all young people. So 50 year was a century for them. So they knew that every 200 years something was going to happen. Yeah, because the observation and their experience. So it took them, you know, 280 years to settle in Tenochtitlan. And so they also were very, very advanced in astronomy. So they, knew about the constellations, they knew about the sun and the moon and the stars, and the planetary conjunctions, and they were very significant for them. So because of that and their own experience, they knew that in every 200 years something will happen. So 52 years times 4, a century times 4, will make 208. So from the time they settled and built Tenochtitlan, adding 208 years more comes to 1531. And what happened in 1531? The conquista, the conquest. So the Aztec had a fatalistic, is that how it's pronounced? Fatalistic. Okay, I'm sorry. Fatalistic mentality. They were upset with the end of the world. And next Monday I'm gonna tell you why. But I mean, the end of the world was just big for them. For us in our generation, remember in what was
Y2K. Y2K.
And then we have like the calendar, the Mayas, the calendar, and the 2000 and something. And I mean, well, for them, it wasn't just like us, a few sporadic times. For them, I mean, every day we live with fear that it may happen, the end of the world. So, why they were so also paranoid and, with this? Because for them, like natural disasters were signs of the end of the world is happening, it's coming. So earthquakes was one of them, those signs. An eclipse, was, big. To see an asteroid, So they, in their mentality, they thought that the earth was, coming apart, Pieces of the earth was, the gods, got angry, and, they were destroying the earth, the cosmos, the universe. So when they experienced an eclipse, so the moon was a goddess and the sun was a god. And they were in constant war, these two gods. They were stepbrothers, the moon and the sun. So because they were, the moon was jealous of the sun, and we will see the story next Monday. I'm not going to tell you, so you can come back. So, but, when an eclipse happens, they knew that we need the sun, for life, to keep, the life and the movement of life and the cosmos. But because of the moon was jealous of the sun, so an eclipse tell the Aztecs that the moon was winning. So the moon was eating the sun, and when they saw the red and the orange, means the sun is bleeding. The god is losing. We need to help him. So when they were or received this message from the god wishing mostly, so they acquire also this duty of preserve the balance in the universe. Yeah? So they were responsible because they were the chosen people. It was their duty to maintain the balance in the universe. So why did they need sacrifices? Or why they need, these? Because through the blood and the hearts, they give life to the God, especially to the Son. So, and we will see, like next week, a little bit more, about this. So, but moon, sun, stars, very, very important for the Aztecs. Yeah, their life of the Aztecs, for example, for us, God is every Sunday, God. Maybe during the week, you might remember that it's God, if you pray or, yeah. So for them, their life was around the gods, 24 hours, yeah, every day, yeah. So for the Aztecs, there was nothing that was separated from the will of the gods. Everything was controlled, by the gods. So, if we have rain, is it because of the God? If we have wind, is it because of the God? If we have food, is it because of the gods? If we have, and then we have to build a temple and then, make them happy, why? Because gods were some good, but some other gods weren't too good. Some of the gods were warriors, yeah? So they had to keep them happy. Because, because by seeing, these natural phenomena in the sky, they were thinking, yeah, the mentality is, okay, the gods are fighting. And if they fight, so what's going to happen? Probably they're going to destroy what they created. Yeah? And also we will see next week that I'm going to tell you just a little bit. I'm going to tell you just a little bit. So they believe, yeah, that they and we are living in the fifth humanity. Yeah. So prior to this humanity, for their understanding, there were already other 4 humanities were created, but they were destroyed by the gods. Yeah, and so they planned to create only 4 humanities. But then they were compassionate after they destroyed the 4th, and they said, let's give them one more chance. So let's create a humanity again. So that's going to be the final. Yeah? So they create a 5th humanity, which was at that time, yeah, or our time. So their fear for the end of the world or the end of humanity was big. That's why they have this fatalistic mentality. Why? Because there was, after that, there's not going to be any more humanity, no more cosmos, no more universe. That was it. So their duty, yeah, because it was given by Huitzilopochtli, the god, yeah, to maintain life and to maintain the balance in the universe. Yeah, so that's why, they did all these sacrifices. So, so this is like, a big and fast overview of the Aztecs. And next week, we are going to mostly see their gods and their philosophy. Yeah, because it's very important for us to understand why is it that these elements influence the life, the religion, their faith, the philosophy at the time of the apparitions. Why? Because also that's interconnected with Guadalupe. It's interconnected with the codex of Guadalupe, the symbols that, of the image. So how is it that this symbol spoke to the reality of the indigenous at the time? Not only the indigenous, but also the religious men who came, who brought faith into the new continent, and to the Spaniards who were so thirsty for power, territory, gold, silver, and slavery. Yeah. So next week, next Monday, we will go more in detail about God's sacrifices, philosophy of the Aztecs, and all that. Yeah. And our third and final Monday, we will go into the symbolism of the apparition, the image of Our Lady. Sounds like a plan? Yeah, are you all interested? Okay, so how are we on time? You need to go now?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock, okay, so you need to go, because I prepared, there's like a video, and is this mix of flamenco, Spanish tradition, and Muslim tradition. And I was going to do like a little, thing with you, so to make you forget about sacrifices, and all that. But if you have to go, maybe we can do it for next. You wanna do it? Oh, you wanna do it? Okay. So can you go to the back? Yeah, that one. Right there. Just hold on, don't play it yet. Okay, so we are going to divide the group in two. Yeah. So these 4 tables, and then these 4 tables. Okay. Okay. So you are more. Yeah. So we're gonna do the easy part here with this group. Okay. So in flamenco, yeah, people sing with their mouth, but also with their hands. Very important, yeah? And this is not just an applause, but it is singing with your hands, yeah? So we are going to this group, yeah, 4 times, yeah? It's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, you did wonderful for being the first time.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much, and can you go all the way down? Yeah, I mean, all the way to the end. So, this is going to be our prayer to end up.
Oh, great.
So, from Isaiah, for Yahweh says this, look, I am going to send peace flowing over her like a river, and like a stream in Spain, the glory of the nations. You will be soft, carried on her hip, and fondled in her lap. As a mother comforts a child, so I shall comfort you. You will be comforted in Jerusalem. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. And may the Lord bless us, protect us from all evil, and bring us to everlasting life.
Amen.
Thank you so much for being so patient.